Hi, and welcome to the Bruce channel. I'm Bruce. Been quite a week and a half, several days. I guess we have to mention to start the shutdown of the federal government. Although, inasmuch as production limits and logistics require that I record this in advance, it's possible that by the time this goes up, they've resolved it. Nevertheless, a couple of takeaways. As before, when they've had these, nothing that endangers the public stops working. Airport security, flight controllers, they all stay on the job. Passport applications, on the other hand, they may become delayed. National parks and museums, well, if they're typically staffed, then they're closed. But if it's just an open area... Anyway, I think a bigger takeaway is how dysfunctional our government has become. It seems to have been dysfunctional before, but it seems now to be worse than ever. Why? Well, here's what I think. A couple of points to keep in mind, too. There have been examples of this brinkmanship in the past. And, the Republicans always blame the Democrats, and the Democrats always blame the Republicans. That's a given. It's also a given that all politicians say things they think put themselves or their side in the best possible light. Of course, we know that. It's essentially akin to salesmanship. A car salesman might talk about the rich, beautiful upholstery and the thick carpeting, but he doesn't say that the controls are 24-karat gold. There's hype, and then there's outright lying. So, yeah, there have been government shutdowns before, but never, ever, when one party held the House and the Senate and the White House. So I think when Mitch McCarthy, and later he was joined by Sarah Huckabee Sanders in saying this, that the shutdown is because of the Democrats, prima facie, they are lying. The Senate is controlled by the Republicans, the House is controlled by the Republicans, the White House is under Republican control. Prima facie, they are lying. And in the case of Little Miss Muffet, she ought to go find a topic. She called the Democrats obstructionists. What she didn't tell you was 4 Republicans voted against it. She didn't mention that, nor did she mention that 5 Democrats voted for it. All right, another big story this week. It's almost beyond belief. This came up at the beginning of the week. It's almost something Stephen King might have dreamed up. I mean, he's had evil automobile, mind-altering resort hotel, vampires, things we know that aren't real, but in the spirit of being entertained, we suspend our disbelief. But apparently, even though this is unbelievable, it is real. In California, a husband and wife in Paris, California, imprisoned their own children, 13 children. 13 children. They were chained to beds and chairs and barely fed. Apparently no consideration given to plumbing or hygiene or sanitary facilities. Adding to this staggering seriality, they age 2 to 29. 29! Adding even more horror, it had to have been going on a long time because they were so emaciated. They didn't even look as old as they were. The way it happened, one of the kids escaped, used a phone to call for help, and when they saw her, she was estimated to be 10 years old, but she's 17. So the husband and wife were arrested, held on $9 million bond each. And, it's not like he was a cult figure. He was, an aeronautical engineer for Grumman, I think? Weird. Also weird. With 13 kids, you have to school them, right? But he listed himself as the principal of the Sandcastle Day School, termed K through 12 private school. Since the beginning of the week, we've learned a bit more, too. They were allowed 1 shower a year. Now, they could wash their hands, before they ate, but they were punished if they washed above the wrists. Can you believe this? This is abuse. Torture, clearly. And if found guilty, they would face life in prison. I hope to prolong their life in prison. Maybe they can live 150 years in prison. Stephen King, must be slapping himself on the forehead saying, I should have thought of this. All right, so it's quite a week when the big weather mess in the South doesn't even get an early mention. And it is a mess in the South. You've doubtless seen the videos, icy roads and the pileups. Now, where I am, wasn't all that bad. We had a BAMA alert, bread and milk alert. So we knew the snow was coming well in advance. It arrived about 5 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And we got some snow. It snowed all day, depending on where in Central Carolina you were. My area got 5 to 9 inches. I got about 6. But of course, we knew this was coming. Schools were closed. They stayed closed. Everything was closed, except, of course, the grocery stores, when they ran out of bread and milk and lots of things. But with everything shut down, only being snow, it was okay. But in the deeper South, where it was an ice emergency, hundreds of flights were canceled, airports closed, multi-vehicle pileups, the interstates couldn't move. I mean, those things sometimes hit here, the ice storms. And they are, I can't imagine a worse nightmare. If the ice gets thick, it pulls down the branches, and the branches go down, the trees go down, takes out power lines. Sometimes, if the ice is thick enough, just that weight alone is enough to take down the power lines. But when it's really bad, you don't get it back quick because the downed trees make passage and navigation impossible. So rather than electric crews, it's the lumber crews that have to work for days, sometimes weeks, to open up the roads. And only then can the electric guys do their thing. So this time, we in Central Carolina did okay, but, even here, it was a worthy snow, even to me. And I grew up, along the shores of Lake Erie, and I know all I ever need to know about snow. But it was a Cleveland-worthy snow event. But what's changed, I've learned from my southern brethren, is don't sweat the removal. I used to shovel the snow or even use my snowblower. Here in the South, I'm always the first kid on the block to have a snowblower. But I don't bother anymore. Snow came Wednesday, Thursday. The sun shone all day. It looked like a beautiful day in Colorado. And it got to be about 30, but Friday almost 50. By Saturday and Sunday, mid to upper 60s. So, the snow went away. Of course, there is more weather coming. Huge storm right now in the northwest. It's wreaking havoc. Why is havoc always wreaked? Wreaking havoc. Why not bringing havoc? Or wreaking anyway, I digress. Coast Guard authorities called off a search for a man who was dragged out to sea off the Oregon coast. And he wasn't on the beach. He was along the highway. What is it? The Pacific Coast Highway, I think? Anyway, that storm is moving east, and we'll just have to wait and see what it decides to do. One other weather word. 2014 was the hottest year on record until it was beat out by 2015. And 2015 only wore the crown for a single year. The new hottest year on record became 2016. That trend stopped. 2017, the records are now in. It was not hotter than 2016. Just barely, though. 2017 replaced 2015 as the second hottest year on record. But, the dozard-in-chief and others of his ilk, of course, he has the self-described genius brain, but he can't see that we're headed for calamity. Well, I'm not personally headed for calamity, and maybe you're not either. But I have no kids or grandkids to consider. Despite that, I say we are headed for calamity because we, the species, the citizens of the world, I'm a part of that group, we face calamity.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. For most of my adult life, I weighed a little over 100 pounds. Not much more than in this picture taken when I was about 17 and considering becoming a jockey. But as is often true, once I crossed into my 40s, extra weight came and it stayed. For years I tried to lose, instead gained, and ended up 153 pounds. And I'm embarrassed to show you this video. Then I learned that it isn't about calories and exercise, but instead it's about what you eat. You might say, sure, ice cream makes you fat. But there were surprises, things like orange juice not being such a wise choice if you're trying to lose weight. So I just made some basic changes to what I ate, not how much, and the weight just fell off. Now, nearly 3 years later, it is still off. And don't misunderstand, I'm eating foods I like, not bamboo shoots. Friends ask me how I did it so often, I put it in a book. It's available as an ebook for all platforms, and the print edition is available at barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. Hey, you can shrink too.
Welcome back. Remember, you can watch all of our previous episodes at our Facebook page or at tinyworld.com/Bruce Channel, and you can write to us at thebrucechannel@yahoo.com. All right. In a normal week, this would have been the lead-off, but last weekend, for 38 terrifying minutes, the residents of Hawaii were told there was an incoming missile and to take shelter. And the warning closed with the ominous words, "This is not a drill." Can you imagine? Turns out it was a mistake. No, it was not a drill. It was a human error. The other day, I had to jump my car's battery because I'd left the headlights on. Human error. Well, for 38 minutes, people in Hawaii were crying. They were texting, "I love you" to their close ones. Of course, they are more sensitive to an incoming missile threat because they are within reach of North Korea, whom the dotard-in-chief routinely confronts with insults. Oh, guess what? While it was still in effect, before anyone knew it was an error, he continued to play golf. Speaking of alerts, we in North Carolina had our own excitement late in the week. It was caused by a malfunction at the Sharon Harris nuclear power plant, which is near Raleigh. Fortunately, the malfunction didn't actually have anything to do with the plant itself. It was just an alarm malfunction. But Friday, about 1 p.m., the alarms went off. Some 40 minutes later, the message came, "There's no emergency." But, maybe not quite as terrifying as an incoming missile. I imagine more than a few people's blood pressure was raised. So I previously mentioned that nearly every place I've ever lived was trying to get on the Great Race. Well, it's not a race, but instead trying to land the second headquarters that Amazon announced it would be building. And literally, just about every place I've lived, in all, 238 metropolitan areas submitted. Well, sorry Cleveland, sorry Greensboro, and sorry to 216 others who joined the battle. Amazon this week released its short list of 20. In North Carolina, Raleigh survived. Traffic is already pretty bad there. And this is going to, wherever it goes, this is going to add to the traffic woes. Also, Atlanta made the list. Their traffic is worse than Raleigh's. Chicago is awful. D.C. is awful. It's almost like Amazon has that sadomasochistic side. We want to make sure. Well, anyway. Philadelphia's on the list. I'm not crazy about their traffic either. Pittsburgh, it would be okay there, I think. Newark, New Jersey, they could certainly use the economic boost. Nashville, I love Nashville. But you add that number of commuters, it's going to take down the quality of life for at least a while until the infrastructure catches up. Columbus, Ohio made it. And it's way too long since I've been to Columbus, so I can't opine how they would be affected vis-a-vis traffic. Ditto for Toronto. Been a long time since I was there, but they made the short list. I do know that it's a great city. Well, we'll have to wait and see and watch it. But there were some cute tweets. The mayor of Birmingham didn't make the short list. He reversed Amazon's smiley thing and tweeted, "Wah, wah," but actually had a very good sportsman-like, good sport message. And Charlotte didn't make it. And their traffic is horrible. Actually, I go through Charlotte a lot more frequently than I go through Raleigh. So I personally am glad that Charlotte wasn't chosen. But Charlotte's mayor, also a good sport, said, "Hey, now we'll have to root for Raleigh." So did you see the story of the airliner that went off the runway in Turkey? Any number of times in a given year we'll hear or see stories of airliners that have runway incidents. Sometimes it's because of snow and maybe the pilot misses the turn. That happened fictionally in Arthur Haley's novel Airport. Snow and ice makes them skid. We've seen airliners go too far off the runway, sometimes into the water. But aside from those that actually have been disastrous, I cannot recall anything as terrifying as this. It was Pegasus Airline. It was Boeing 737. 168 people on board, and it went off the runway in Trabzon Airport in northern Turkey Saturday night a week ago. The pilots reported later, just after landing, the right engine suddenly surged, and that forced into a huge, hard left turn. But what makes it terrifying, off to the left of the runway is the Black Sea. So it skidded off the runway onto the dirt, got hung up on the edge, pointing down toward the Black Sea. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. If you were on the left side of the plane looking out the window, as you were approaching, there's the Black Sea. It's there. And then everything feels routine, and suddenly you turn left, and you can't see forward. It's not like a bus or a car, so you don't know what's going on. And you're moving, and then it gets bumpy when you hit the dirt, and then suddenly you're tilting down. And if you're on the left, the Black Sea was there. Wow. And, if it had gone a little, so it didn't tip over the edge, but if it had gone a little bit farther, everyone did get off safely. But what if it had gone off the edge? Just a little farther, it would have hit the water, falling into the water, not from 10,000 feet hard, but hard enough to certainly provide some damage. Structural integrity would have been lost. Some people might have been hurt from the sudden stop. And then what? The plane would have crumpled a bit, and depending how deeply, that might have hurt some passengers in front. How deep is the water? I don't know. You have to believe that some people might have drowned if it went under the water. And if the water is really deep, wouldn't it have completely sunk? If the front was crumpled, water would have rushed in. So then what do? If the plane is almost like that, how do you climb up to the higher area? The floor is not under you. The floor is next to you. And the air in the back of the plane would have helped keep it buoyant, slowing the water's entry into the plane. But what if you were trying to get out and you open the rear doors? Suddenly that buoyancy is going to be gone, and the water will rush in more quickly. And if you did get it open, how do you get out? The sliding ramps, the ones that inflate, they're pointing the wrong way. It's just hard to imagine what it must have felt like. Fortunately, it didn't slide off. They got everyone off safely. They towed the thing in. But, wow. Oh, 2 other flying notes. Did you hear about the Aeromexico airliner? Almost landed on the wrong runway in San Francisco. Instead of the runway, it was going to land on the parallel taxiway, which had planes taxiing on it. It got down to a few hundred feet before someone noticed and ordered a go-around. I was on a plane once set to land at Hartsfield in Atlanta, and we were, a few hundred feet. And I lived in Atlanta at the time, so I was familiar with the landing route, and we were going over some commercial buildings, an industrial park kind of thing. And I know we were close to the roof, and then just beyond was the edge of the runway. So we're just above the roof, we're almost down. And then the engine suddenly accelerated, and we did a go-around. I never found out what caused it, but maybe something like that. Maybe a plane was on the runway that wasn't supposed to have been. Anyway. Passenger jets are designed to fly high and long distances, right? Aside from George Jetson, most cars are not. But did you see where the car launched off an abutment and flew into a dentist's office? The dentist's office on the 2nd floor? Nighttime, no one was in the office. And word is the driver was high. No kidding. When a car lies in the 2nd floor of a building, everything's high.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. You cry all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Cry all the time. There you ain't nothing but a rabbit, and you ain't no friend of mine. When I set you was high class, well, that was just the line. They said you was high class, well, that was just the line. Yeah, you ain't never but a rabbit, and you ain't no friend of mine.
All right, we spoke of the cities in competition for the second headquarters for Amazon. Another kind of cities contest is also playing out, and of course I mean the NFL playoffs. Of my 4 original preseason picks, only New England is still in it. I want to be wrong. I hope they lose. I have New England friends. It's not personal, but having the Patriots and they're constant in the playoffs, doesn't that become annoying? They become the New York Yankees, and outside of New York, everybody used to hate the Yankees. Personally, of course, I don't wish bad things for them. I don't want them to have accidents or illness or injury to the kids. I just stop with the dynasty stuff. Reports, too, that Tom Brady cut his thumb and is listed as questionable. I believe he cut his thumb. I also believe there is zero chance he doesn't play. And aside from New England, how do you not like everybody else? Philadelphia had some good teams, and then they had some tough times, and, then they're back. They're using a backup quarterback right now, but he's good enough, to beat the favored Falcons. And their future bodes well, long-term future. They've got a young and very promising quarterback, Carson Wentz, even though he's out with injury right now. Jacksonville. Years and years of futility. Just like the Browns, they finished last in their division last year, and yet they knocked off Pittsburgh. I'd love for them to go to their first Super Bowl, which, to do, they'd have to get by New England. So, go Jacksonville. Oh, on the other side, Philadelphia's tough, and they have a wonderful defense, but you simply cannot not root for the Vikings. I was okay with the Saints. But the Saints have won a Super Bowl. The Vikings have been 4 times, never won. And although the Vikings have two high draft pick quarterbacks, it's a journeyman, undrafted guy. Case Keenum, he's played lights out all season, including last week when he brought them back, maybe the most miraculous comeback in football history. He made a perfect throw. It was only designed to get a last-second field goal, but instead it went for a walk-off touchdown. It was just so out of the blue, so remarkable. And, as I said, would have been okay with the Saints winning. First half, they couldn't do anything, and then Drew Brees brought them back. And then it took a miraculous finish, so...
Keenum's going to try to work the ball on the boundary. Keenum steps into it. Pass is caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
You can understand how thunderstruck the New Orleans fans must have felt. They're right there on the edge of winning. I know that feeling. Anyway, in response, this is great. The New Orleans Times-Picayune had one of the most apropos headlines on any topic in any newspaper ever. One more thing about the Minnesota playing for the championship and the history of the Super Bowl, which of course is played in various cities all over the country, but typically in warmer climates or in covered domes. Cleveland would never be considered. It's, they don't have a dome stadium, and playing in February in Cleveland, it could be warm and mild, but you can't play those kinds of odds. Minnesota has a new stadium. It's covered. It was selected as the site for this year's Super Bowl some years ago. No team has ever played in a Super Bowl in its own home stadium. In fact, no team has ever played in the conference championship for the chance to play in its home stadium. So the Vikings have broken that precedent. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. One other thing, I did read where nobody pronounced league officials and broadcast bigwigs. Nobody wants it to be Jacksonville and Minnesota because they're small markets. All right, it is true. Philadelphia has more Philadelphia fans than Jacksonville and Vikings fans combined. But I think people would find it very easy to root for either of these, as I'm doing. And besides, the Super Bowl has become a gather-together event. Get the wings, grade the commercials. Teams playing aren't going to affect that. All right, well, last week I showed you the very first time ABC's overnight news program, World News Now, wrapped up the week with Barry Mitchell and the World News Poker. There have been other iterations, some very interesting guests, but for years this was the standard.
Politics and foreign wars, all the weather, all the scores, that's the World News Polka. Tapes that roll in way too slow. Stuff you saw on Koppel's show. That's the World News Polka. It's late at night, you're wide awake, and you're not wearing pants. So grab your World News Now mug and everybody dance. Hey! Have some fun, be a pal, every anchor guy and gal. Do the World News Polka, everybody!
That's the World News Polka.
Insomniacs only.
That's the World News Polka.
Who cares what the bosses think? They're a goofy crew.
No clue.
And if your neighbors call the cops, here's all you have to do.
News?
When they yell,
It's FF3.
tell them, hey, it's news to me. That's the World News Polka. They make us work the graveyard shift, that's why we go for broke. So why not tune in ABC and join our little joke? 5 whole days every week, we're here with a tongue-in-cheek. And the World News Polka, not lip-sync, it's the World News
Da, 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 da.
Polka.
Yeah.
Tune in Monday and learn how to think inside the box.
So yeah, the women as reporters in their trench coats and waving microphones, they are known as the Mitchellettes. All right. Coming up this week, Tuesday the 23rd, is National Handwriting Day, which my 5th grade teacher granted me permission to ignore in perpetuity. She knew a hopeless case. Wednesday the 24th is Beer Can Appreciation Day, which I will not ignore. I will certainly both appreciate and celebrate. Saturday the 27th is Punch the Clock Day. Really? Saturday? Well, punch it or not, find a remarkable can. I hope your upcoming week is the best you've ever had.